Hey guys, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing whether or not you should be a loan officer assistant before becoming an actual mortgage loan officer. So this is a question that I get a lot. So in this video, I'll be going over the differences between a loan officer assistant position and a mortgage loan officer position, what would be expected of you from both positions, how much you'll make, etc. And then at the end, I'll go over my own personal story and also some recommendations. This way you guys have more information to decide whether or not you want to become a loan officer assistant first or go straight into becoming a mortgage loan officer. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, so let's break down the job descriptions for a loan officer assistant and a mortgage loan officer. So as an assistant, it's going to be very much to the point, and it's also going to depend on the loan officer that you're working with, right? If the loan officer has a certain system, certain techniques, certain priorities, then you're going to go based off of those, because as a loan officer, it's your own business. So when you're an assistant, you're going to be operating on, hey, how does that loan officer that I'm an assistant for operate their own business? Are they very personable? Do they like phone calls for their clients? But for the most part, you're going to be doing things like requesting documents from clients, answering basic questions, right? Nothing crazy. The loan officer, for the most part, is the one that's going to be talking about interest rates and quotes with the clients. You'll also be setting up appointments, giving updates, stuff like that, and you'll be paid hourly. Now, I did some research, and the average loan officer assistant gets paid about $21 an hour. Again, it's going to depend. Maybe the loan officer that you're working with is on a budget and they're going to pay you a little bit less, or maybe they're going to pay you a little bit more, but the average came out to about $21 an hour. Now, the nice thing about being an assistant is that for the most part, you'll be an assistant to a top producer, right? This person needs an assistant because they're busy, they're getting deals, and you're going to be able to see what they do, what works for them, what doesn't work for them, the systems, the tools that they use to grow their business and operate their business. So that's the nice thing about being an assistant, because there's a lot to learn in this business. You don't just come in and know everything. You don't just come in and based off of the pre-licensing education become a top producer. That's not the case. There's a lot to learn. And the last thing that I do want to mention about being a loan officer assistant is that most of this work, or most of the work that you'll be doing, will be behind a computer. So depending on the loan officer you're working with, they may not need you to come into the office. Maybe you'll be able to work from home because, again, it's a lot of over the phone and behind a computer. So now very briefly, let's talk about the mortgage loan officer and what's going to be expected of you. And that's pretty much everything, right? You're going to be in charge of the sales, the business planning, the prospecting, the follow-up. Everything is going to be under you. You're going to be in charge of everything because it's your own business. You're starting a business. You're not just being an employee. You're not just being a salesperson. So you are going to have a lot of hats and a lot of responsibilities. Another thing I want to add is it's purely commission. If you don't close a deal, you don't get paid. And this is something that you may want to think of if you want to go straight into becoming a loan officer. You're not going to get a paycheck every single week or every single month. I know loan officers that haven't closed a deal in 6 months or in 1 year. So you need to ask yourself, hey, can I go 6 months or 1 year without a paycheck? So that's something to consider. And another thing to consider is, of course, the opportunity, because as a loan officer, you'll be getting on average maybe 1.25 to 2% of the loan amount. So that's $1 million loan amount. That's about $12,000 to $20,000 in commission that you'll be getting off that one deal. Whereas an assistant, you're making $17, maybe $21 an hour. So you can see it's a big difference. And another thing to note as a loan officer is very few people will be willing and interested in teaching you, right? Because you're on your own. They see you as competition. You're a mortgage loan officer. Whereas when you're an assistant, the person that you're an assistant for wants to teach you. They're going to teach you, because if they teach you, they're going to have less work to do. You're going to be able to help them grow their business. So they're going to be willing and all into teaching you. Now, I have partnered up with OnCourse, previously known as Learn Mortgage. They're one of the top loan officer pre-licensing education platforms online, and they're offering the Enrique and Greatness family 20% off the pre-licensing education and a tool called Prep Excel, which will help you guys prepare and pass the exam. So they're offering 20% off. I have the link down below. They do a phenomenal job. They helped me get my license, so I highly encourage you guys to take advantage of that offer. So now on to my personal story. Now, I never knew what a mortgage loan officer was. So I didn't really think of, hey, should I become a loan officer assistant or should I become a mortgage loan officer from the get-go? I started off as a loan officer assistant because I started when the refi boom was going on and loan officers were super busy. So I started off as an assistant just because I needed a job. I came right out of college and I needed a job. And then I started seeing, hey, this is not too bad and I can make a lot of money. So that's when I started thinking, hey, should I get my license and become a mortgage loan officer? And I gave it a lot of thought. I thought about it for a very long time and I was like, hey, you know what? This is what I want to be. This is what I want to do. And at the time, I was also living with my parents. So I didn't have to worry about, hey, if I don't close a deal, I won't be able to feed my family. Or if I don't close a deal, I won't have money for rent because I was still living with my parents. So that's one of the reasons why I decided to make the transition early to become a mortgage loan officer. The other being that I committed to this being my career. I wasn't like, hey, I'm gonna try it out. I wasn't like, hey, I'm gonna test it out. I wasn't like, hey, this is gonna be a side gig. I was like, this is going to be my career, period. So I got my license and I jumped into being a loan officer. Of course, I did that after about 1 to 2 years of being a loan officer assistant. So I did learn a good amount of things, but let me tell you guys, being a loan officer is a lot. You could be a loan officer assistant for 10, 20 years, but it's nothing like being an actual mortgage loan officer because as an assistant, you're just doing paperwork. You're just requesting documents. You're just sending updates. As a loan officer, you have to prospect, you have to connect with agents, you have to maintain relationships, create relationships, strengthen relationships. So it's a big difference. Even though you're gonna have a certain understanding if you're an assistant first, it's still a lot to learn as a mortgage loan officer. So that's kind of my story as to how I jump into being a mortgage loan officer. All right, so now let's talk about what I would recommend for you guys. Well, on one side, on the loan officer assistant, I would recommend it if, let's say, you need the paychecks, right, because you're paying your own rent, you're not living with your parents, you have your own family, then I would recommend it because you're going to be getting paid and you're also going to be getting trained. Now, if you're someone that already has a career and maybe wants to do the loan officer on the side and kind of ease into it, then maybe it would be a good idea to jump into being a loan officer. This way, you're still getting your paychecks, you're being a loan officer on the side, teaching yourself on the side. So that's kind of how I would think about it. Don't make it too complicated. It's nothing complicated. It really comes down to, hey, do I need the paychecks or can I take the risk? Right? For me, I was able to take the risk because I live with my parents. If you can't take the risk, then start off as an assistant, learn as much as possible, and then maybe thinking about making the transition into being a fully commissioned loan officer. And that's pretty much it for today's video. Hopefully that was helpful. I didn't want to make it too complicated. It isn't too complicated. If you guys enjoyed this video, leave a big thumbs up, comment down below what you guys thought, and subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks again so much for your time. See you in the next video and be great.